We live, Emily?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Right. Good evening, all. Welcome to the Williston Development Review Board meeting for November 9th, 2021. I'm Pete Kelly, Chair of the DRB. Welcome to the applicants and the public. Please sign in by renaming yourself on the participant toolbar in the Zoom virtual meeting platform. This is a hybrid meeting taking place at Town Hall and also virtually on Zoom. All members of the board and the public can communicate in real time. Planning staff will provide Zoom instructions for public participation before the hearings are opened. All votes taken at the meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. If Zoom crashes, this meeting will be continued to November 23rd, 2021. Let's start by taking attendance. Paul Christensen.
Present.
Don Hemmelgarn.
Present.
Scott Riley.
Present.
Dave Saladino. Dave Turner.
Here.
And Chair Kelly is present as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we do have a quorum. Okay. Very good. So tonight we've got two applications on the agenda, DP 20-18, which is we're going to call it the Catamount Golf Club Residential Subdivision. It's the official title is Ethan Allen Holdings LLC, Chris Senesac, and the other is DP 09-01.23. That's a Finney Crossing project to construct building H as in Henry, which is the restaurant in the urban park. So those are the two items on the agenda. First, we'll go in, before we go into the Zoom overview, Emily, let's go into a public forum. Is there anyone, actually we should do the Zoom first so that the functionality of Zoom could be utilized if people do want to raise their hand. So Emily, why don't you give us a tutorial on Zoom, please?
There's a lot of tools on your toolbar. Keeping your camera on is optional. Use the microphone up arrow to mute and unmute. Please keep yourself muted unless it is your turn to speak. You can use the chat bar for Zoom technical questions or to let us know if you would like to speak. You can also use the reactions section of the toolbar to raise your hand. If you're joining in by telephone, press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to mute and unmute. Tonight we will be using screen share. You can optimize your view by clicking View Options next to the green toolbar and using the side-by-side mode to drag the center slider bar to balance participants in the video feed and the document screen share. If you have a bad internet connection, try turning off your video, closing other tabs or programs. You can also use your telephone as a speaker or microphone by clicking the up arrow on the toolbar and choose Leave Computer Audio. If you have any questions tonight about using Zoom, please message Simon on the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Next up is the public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone participating in this meeting who would like to make a comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you would please raise your virtual hand, and we'll call.
I'm seeing no chats and no raised hands so far.
Okay. Very good. So we'll go right to the public hearing. First up is DD 20-18, which is a pre-app for Ethan Allen Holdings LLC. And who is present for the applicant? I think I see Chris and Mr. Bldg, familiar face. Is there anyone else? Is Andy Rowe with you, or can you mute it?
I was trying to follow instructions by muting myself. I think it's just Chris and I are going to be here speaking on behalf of the application.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
You would identify yourself in your...
Pete, I'd like to note that I'm going to be recusing myself on this application as an abutting landowner.
Understood, thank you. Okay, Mr. Bldg, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Ken Bldg. My address is 683 Maple Street, Waterbury Center, Vermont, 05677. Here tonight representing Ethan Allen Holdings LLC.
Thank you. Chris Senatak, name for the record and address, please.
Christopher Senatak, 4 Pearl Street, Essex Junction, Vermont.
Thank you. First up is staff.
All right. This is a request for pre-application review in order to participate in growth management in 2022. This is a clerical pre-application. Its purpose is for growth management. The Catamount Golf subdivision proposes 130 dwelling unit equivalents, including affordable housing, and it received growth management allocation in March 2021. The subdivision includes a variety of housing types, open space, shared recreation facilities, multi-use path and trails, and road connections to Mountain View Road and Raven Circle. This property is located in the residential zoning district. Tonight, staff is recommending that the DRB take testimony and close, deliberate, and approve the recommendation with a motion as drafted below. There's not a full list of recommendations because this approval only authorizes the applicant to participate in growth management. The recommendations about overall subdivision design were approved by the DRB at the original pre-app review in 2020. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. This property has a lengthy permitting history that's summarized in a prior staff report. And most recently, it went through growth management in March 2021, where it scored 67 points and was allocated 60 dwelling unit equivalents. The advisory boards and other departments were not required to comment on this application because this is just a request to participate in growth management. They're not commenting on any element of subdivision design at this point. There was one comment letter received at the time of mail out by John Hemmelgarn. That is included in your packet. And I did include some staff comment here. The site plan and the unit count that are shown are slightly different than what was presented during the original pre-app review and March 2021 growth management. The DRB will have an opportunity to review the road alignment and address the comments in Mr. Hemmelgarn's letter at discretionary permit. The first discretionary permit has not yet been filed, but is anticipated in the coming months. Subdivision designs change between pre-application, growth management, and discretionary permit as the applicant studies land constraints and designs infrastructure and construction plans. It is not uncommon for unit count and road alignment to change. At discretionary permit, the DRB will make findings that the proposed layout and all its design elements uphold the growth management score and meet the other land development standards of the bylaws. If authorized tonight, the Catamount Golf subdivision can participate in March 2022 growth management hearing. They're currently proposing 148 dwelling units as 130 dwelling unit equivalents. What follows is a summation of the affordable housing and the various levels of affordable housing that are proposed in the subdivision. This area is located outside the growth center, but within the sewer service area, and subject to the criteria of 11.8. There are 9 categories of criteria. What follows is some supplemental information about density and affordability and growth management allocation. In Williston, density and growth management are based on the dwelling unit equivalent, whereby a studio or 1-bedroom unit is half a dwelling unit equivalent, or DUE, and a 2-bedroom unit or more bedrooms is 1 DUE. And there's some implications this has on how the density is factored into the subdivision. Various levels of affordability are either shown on the growth management allocation table, and then if it's less than 80% of the area median income at that affordability level, it's not on the table. And there is a density bonus based on the provision of affordable housing. All this to say that the growth management questionnaire, the first discretionary permit, and subsequent amendments must include a careful accounting of each unit, its bedroom count, and affordability status to make sure the density bonus and allocation schedule for the overall subdivision is upheld. Staff will work with the applicant on a tracking mechanism. What follows is a bylaw excerpt about the requirement for growth management to go through pre-application in order to qualify, and a motion for the DRB's consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Okay, Ken and/or Chris, this is your turn.
Well, I'm not sure how much we would like to add to that. It's a pretty good summation of where we are tonight and where we have come from. As Emily has pointed out, the site plan that we're submitting now is slightly different from what the board has seen in the past. And Emily has sort of hinted at some of the reasons for that. And really it has to do with we're in the process of preparing to submit our application for discretionary permit for the first phase of the project. Most likely you would see that sometime in the early part of 2022. And as part of the completion of the engineering studies that are necessary for that, wetlands analysis, road alignment, etc., as well as some changes to the plan that we needed to make to accommodate the requirements of the Public Works Department in terms of the road width, etc. So those things are incorporated, if you will, into the plan that we submitted with this application. The unit count is slightly different, and this is again due to some of the specific findings that we're learning about as doing the studies necessary to submit for discretionary permit. But the project is by and large essentially the same. It has all of the same elements that we received scoring for in growth management in the early part of this year. As I said, it's largely still the same project with a couple of changes. We do think some of the changes to the road design will result in a better project, sort of a more natural flow to the street, especially the main street that's going to come down out from Mountain View Road and connect to the major part of the development. As Emily said, our intention for being here tonight is to meet the bylaw requirement, participate in growth management, pre-application in order for us to participate in growth management review that will take place in March 2022. And otherwise, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And my apologies to Larry Burke. I realized that I had the wrong engineering firm and asked if Andy Rowe was with you, so my apologies to follow Larry if he's on. Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to over to the DRB to ask any questions that you may have.
I'm good, Pete.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go around the board. Scott, you said you're okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Paul Christensen?
Yeah, I'm fine, since we can basically revisit this again.
Okay, thank you. John, you recused yourself. And I don't have any questions. Okay, so I think that's everybody.
Oh, one point.
Okay.
I'm assuming that John's letter will just be kicked on to when we finally get to the actual, the business about where the path that's more for the final, right?
That's gonna be introduced and discussed at the discretionary permit phase.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yeah. Okay, members of the public, are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this application? Looks like there's a raised hand.
Arthur Hawgood, you can unmute yourself and speak. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Eli Hawgood, and I have Arthur Hawgood right here as well.
Hello.
And we live at 1448 Mountain View Road. We are at a butter, and also Arthur Hawgood is the president of the HOA of the townhouses at Catamount. We would like to express our concern about the traffic and would like to ask the board and the town of Williston to please lower the speed limit or put up some stop signs or traffic lights or something in order to control the traffic flow. The reason that we are asking this is because we have witnessed 2 cars off of the road, either at our townhouse development or very close by our townhouse development in the past 6 months. One of these accidents actually occurred within about a foot of our personal fence. And so we are concerned about having, when we're talking about 130 units, then we're probably talking about 260 cars. And so this level of traffic will be a significant concern with this narrow road unless we lessen the speed limit to about 30 miles an hour, or add a stop sign, or add a traffic light, or something. Really, whatever can be done to control the traffic on this road is necessary. Thus far, there has been development on this road without enough concern for the traffic that is happening.
We're walkability, there's no walkability at all on this section of Mountain View Road. After at Old Stage Road, there's a path, there's no path that comes from Old Stage Road over to Route 2A. So, adding all this traffic and no walkability for the houses here is a significant burden.
And then also too, on some comment about the sewer capacity, because we know that that was a concern in the creation of our development, and so we're wondering what the sewer capacity issue is at this point when we're looking at developing an additional development.
Okay, does that complete the comment?
It does.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much for those thoughtful comments. Both speed limits and sewer allocation are out of the purview of the DRB. Just an FYI on that. So this is not the forum to make that case, but I appreciate your thoughtful comments. Emily, do you have any guidance on where to direct those comments?
Yes, I do. So the first one was about traffic and vehicle speeds. So this project will be required to provide a traffic study at the discretionary permit phase of review. The traffic study will mainly look at if this subdivision will create traffic congestion at neighboring intersections. It'll probably look at what does that new intersection at Mountain View Road need to include. Does it need to be a stop sign, turn lanes, queuing lanes? That type of thing will be looked at in the traffic study. In terms of roadway design and vehicle speeds on town roads, the select board does have a traffic calming policy. It sets out the various steps that citizens can take to make their comments known about traffic calming measures, vehicle speeds, and what the process would be from the education end of the spectrum to actual physical changes on town right-of-way in terms of crosswalk bump outs, speed humps, that type of thing. Third, several years ago, the select board did consider a study of the Mountain View Road corridor and considered a couple options, including off-road paths on the south side of Mountain View Road, the north side of Mountain View Road, and the third option of just doing additional paving on the curb for on-street bike lanes. The select board ultimately decided on that third option. If you guys send me an email tomorrow, I'm happy to send you links to that study about why the select board made that decision. And lastly, about traffic, when you look at the regional traffic flows through the area, the traffic has increased on Mountain View Road over the years. However, we see that increase continue onto North Williston Road as part of that regional traffic network of people commuting from the core of Chittenden County, Burlington, South Burlington, even Williston, out towards Jericho, Essex, West Bolton, etc. You see that consistent number of vehicles from those various intersections all the way to River Road in Essex. And Matt can probably speak a little bit better to the sewer allocation. I do know sewer allocation was more constrained several years ago. The town, through the select board's attachment A policy, does set out the number of gallons per day that can be allocated to different uses, industrial, residential. I know there was a crunch in the residential category years ago.
So before we move on to sewer capacity though, I just want to remark a little bit more about the roadways, in that while I understand that these studies have been done, I don't think they have adequately considered the extent of the accidents and the extent that people are speeding on these roads. And I don't think that adequately addresses my concerns and the concerns of others within our HOA that the additional traffic is going to be a problem, and that the impact of more cars and more potential speeders is going to become a problem for this road. And additionally, I'm sure that the town of Williston doesn't want lives lost because of the narrowness of this road and the speed at which people are routinely driving. And also the speed at which people are routinely driving off the road. Again, I stress that that we have had a car, we have had a police report that has documented the car tracks that were within a foot of our fence. And it's a serious issue. And so, as we are talking about how this might impact development in this area, it is not completely divorced from the fact that the way that traffic is handled also affects development, and development affects traffic. And so, while I know that you're trying to say that this should be handled by a different board, it really is intertwined, and these two issues cannot be ignored.
Okay, thank you. Emily, would you like to introduce Ian Campbell, please?
Yes, Ian, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Ian Campbell. I live at 117 Hannon Drive in the Brennan Woods neighborhood. I've been a homeowner here since October of 2015. We also have a family who lives on Zephyr Road 574, Colleen, my ex-wife, and we share custody of our children. And I was here before speaking about the developments that are occurring or planned on the old Essex Lines Church property. So let me know when I can start my comments. I can't. Okay, thank you.
Yep, ready to go.
Great, thank you. So I've provided 2 screenshots, and I apologize for the unscientific nature of them. They're essentially things that I put together as overlays and or overlays of bits of information. The first one, which Emily has up, is essentially and very much to scale. The green orange line indicating the right of way for the Cirque Highway. But then what we have essentially here are the plans directly from the drawings from the engineering firm, overlaid onto the existing properties that we have in this area. So basically my concern is I want to see the ability for people to be able to move into Williston and into our school district, into the quality of lifestyle that we have here, be promoted as much as possible. And I certainly see, especially with how property prices have gone during the pandemic, that it becomes essentially impossible for that to happen. You probably have seen recent news reports talking about the most affordable places to live in Vermont, and South Burlington, Essex, St. Albans and so forth. They all are here in the top list, and Williston is not there because we have a huge shortage of available housing. And while I appreciate that, we also have to remember what Williston has gone through since the introduction of the brown box stores, which dates back to when I was in high school, and Chris Snyder was as well, at least the planning stage. We need to be very careful about how we make a transition from urban districting to rural districting, because this is Vermont, and this is not New Jersey. This is not where basically you can just assemble these things and assume that everything's going to work fine because we decide we want to have a certain density population just here within a generation. If you just look at that drawing, again, the first one that Emily popped up, which was where essentially overlaying the status development from the plans to existing boarding properties. Essentially what we have here is twice the population density as we do with any of the adjoining areas. And this is, it's whether we're talking about Brennan Woods, we're talking about the outskirt areas of Southbridge. That in itself is not a problem, but it presents itself with a question of why do we have this much density occurring in this amount of land? With respect and giving respect to affordable housing and having yes.
Sir, I just want to, you know, in the interest of time, I want to.
Okay, sure.
Well, I err on the side of letting people speak because I really try to have an inclusive meeting here. But a couple of things. One is this is pre-app, so you know, all we're doing tonight is advancing this concept so that it can participate in growth management in March. And there's going to be much more detail at the discretionary permit phase. So that is where more input is sought and probably more appropriate from the community. So that's point point number one. Point number two is that, the DRB fundamentally just judges projects for compliance on a rule book. The unified bylaws is the rule book, and all we do is we judge compliance to the rule book that is given to us by others. And so something like density is in the regulations, and it's it's recommended by the planning commission and ratified by the select board, and we have no say over that, none.
Okay.
And so, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but in the interest, and you're very thoughtful and well-spoken, and you've put a considerable amount of time into this, and I appreciate that, but it's really nothing that we can influence.
I fully appreciate that, Mr. Kelly, but for the sake of having people be mindful as this progresses, even though we have not, there's not been discussion about whether things may change. We just had a big meeting of minds this past summer talking about how Taft's Corners as an embodiment of a more urban center, of a greater population density, essentially, perhaps would be a good idea to focus on, because we want to have the rural character of Vermont still be presented to everyone as being something that Williston is. If you would all just take the time to take a look at the two drawings I made, at least as part of the beginnings of thinking about how this is going to move forward. Essentially, what the second slide is, which you can look at at your own time, it is to scale. The Snyder proposal for the Essex Lions Church property, the Senesac Academy Country Club property, but also, very curiously, the proposal, which is not yet been addressed yet, will be in an upcoming meeting about the Trinity Baptist Church development. You see essentially three very much different ideas, and what I was also alluding to was what I mentioned when we were meeting specifically about the Snyder development on the Essex Lions Church property. We're seemingly forgetting the desire, which seems to be embodied by everybody who's been participating in at least the ideas of how Taft's Corners and Williston as a greater whole are going to come together, that we should not see an increase in population density as we move away from that urban core. And to be perfectly honest, I see Trinity and their proposal following that line because it looks very much similar to properties in that area. Whereas for this particular development, these houses presented, other places like Creek's Edge, where you have a high density, low population overall, but high density per unit acre, being entirely out of character with the rest of the adjoining areas. I wish that land availability and development could occur when people wanted to, but to be perfectly honest, that kind of high density that I'm seeing in both what I spoke about before with Chris Snyder as well as the Senesac development, that seems to be more appropriate to what we should be seeing in the Taft's Corners general area, not in these outlying areas. And again, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed or give the option of being able to have more property, more green space around them, as a house and making that affordable, but for the sake of affordable housing, we're creating a greater density structure. We're getting, that's being allowed, but it's out of character. It's everything around it.
Ian, I respectfully ask that you wrap this up, please, because you've continued on a tangent that I asked you not to do, sir.
Very well. I think I've said all that I need to, and as long as the notes were taken down and the slides put into the record, when I have the chance to be able to talk about these details again, I will. But I want you all to be mindful of this. I've been a Vermonter since 1970 when I was 2 years old, and I'm seeing the beginnings of things that I don't think are appropriate as far as development density being away from urban core. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other raised hands, Emily?
Yes, Arthur Hawgood.
Hi again. I wanted to ask just for a point of clarity here. So what is the next step after this discretionary, or this particular permit is approved or pre-approval is? What is the next level where we can participate in the process?
Yeah, so in March, this project will go to the DRB, where the DRB will compare the subdivision to the criteria of Chapter 11, give the project a score and an allocation schedule. Then it can proceed from growth management to discretionary permit. Because they already got growth management allocation earlier this year in March 2021, they're authorized to proceed to discretionary permit at any time. So it's TBD if they'll file that before growth management in 2022 or after. And that discretionary permit is complete site plan review, where we compare all elements of the subdivision design to the criteria of the bylaw. Does the density comply with the density standards of the bylaw, the wetlands analysis, etc.? And after discretionary permit, it can do its final plans and permitting to start phases of construction on infrastructure and houses.
And I don't mean to be snide and asking that, but at that next meeting, are we going to have board members commenting that the public should stop talking? Or because it just seems that Ian had something to say, and I don't understand the appropriateness of him being cut off like that. And I certainly object to the public not being told that our input isn't valid. I don't think that's legitimate.
Arthur, I never said that the info wasn't valid. I was trying to say that it's out of DRB's control, and so this is
a matter of interpretation. You guys
it's the wrong forum.
It's your job to interpret the rules, not just put things up there and say that you're bound by them. There's no such thing as a rule that doesn't have room for interpretation. So, whenever you guys are applying the law, you are interpreting it and doing it in a way that you guys think is the right way, but that's not the only way to do it. So, listening to other viewpoints is important.
Okay, any other comments? Any other people with raised hands? Are you seeing any, Emily?
I'm no raised hands. Ian Comment just sent me a message in the chat to make his PNG files public. We will add those images that were shared tonight a part of the minutes record. And it looks like Kevin Mezuzin has a question. Kevin, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, if I'm muted, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Kevin Mezuzin, 1120 Butternut Road, here in Williston. I've got a question for the applicant. In growth management, you received 0 points for conserve energy. Are you planning on applying the conserve energy component to the project moving forward?
So the scoring under growth management, you should probably read through what the scoring criteria is under growth management. We did our best to try to score as high as we could in growth management, looking at all the various incentives that are available in the bylaw. But what I would tell you is the bar to score points under that criteria is extremely high.
I understand that.
So at this point,
No.
I'm not sure that we would be able to make adjustments to the project that would result in us getting a different score. And what I would also say in that regard, that doesn't mean that we don't have any consideration for energy efficiency. All the units are gonna be constructed in a fashion that's gonna meet the state's energy efficiency requirements, meet or exceed those requirements. But the town's criteria for energy efficiency goes way beyond that. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay, I'm very familiar with the bylaw. Having received allocation of points in growth management for my current project, I've committed to the town, committed to my project, of meeting that criteria. And I would suggest that this project consider looking at that again, because it is a priority for the town, as well as an opportunity for this project to set the example.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Are there any other raised hands?
No more raised hands, no more comments in the chat. I will add one staff comment that anyone is welcome to reach out to planning staff by phone or email. We are open in person as well. We're happy to dig into the bylaw with people, explain Williston's planning history, and provide a deeper context than what can be provided in a DRB meeting. Mr. Hawgood did mention the subjectivity of some of the development review, and I would say that growth management criteria are probably some of the most subjective requirements in the bylaw. So we're happy to help applicants understand that review process and what happens at growth management in March, and do encourage people to reach out to me or Matt and pick our brains. We like answering questions about the bylaw.
Thank you, and we anticipate doing so. We are also in the field, so would love to have some discussions about some of the background statutes and time issues.
Sounds good.
Okay, members of the DRB, any final questions?
I'm good.
I'm all set.
Okay, last call.
Fine.
Ken or Chris, any last comments?
I don't have any comments.
Okay, we're going to close DP 20-18. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is DP 09-01.23. This is a discretionary permit, DP, for building H in Urban Park in Finney Crossing area of town. Staff goes first. Right, you're recusing yourself, Scott, thank you. And Mr. Hemmelgarn, you're back after this one?
I'm back in the saddle.
Okay, thank you. Staff goes next.
All right, this is a request for discretionary permit to construct Building H, a single-story restaurant, 4,300 square feet in size, and the Finney Crossing Urban Park with parking, sidewalks, and related appurtenances. This property is currently vacant. It's 0.85 acres in size. The current use is vacant. They're proposing a commercial use and a park. It has access on town and private roads. It's located in the Taft Corners zoning district, where it is subject to design review, but not Conservation Commission review. Tonight, we're recommending that the DRB take testimony and close, deliberate, and make a decision. We're recommending approval, but only if the DRB carefully considers the findings, conclusions, and conditions drafted for the urban park and growth management score. If the DRB would like additional design elements added to the urban park or other parks in Finney Crossing, then the hearing should be continued so the applicant can provide more information and site plans. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing this discretionary permit for Building H in the urban park. Finney Crossing has a lengthy permitting history that began in 2003, prior to the current bylaws, and includes several amendments as each phase moved from sketch plan to reality. I have excerpted some important dates as they pertain to this review. So in 2007 was Finney Crossing's original approval with a 2005 site plan. This was a site plan that included more greens and commons in the commercial side of the development, as well, including an amphitheater. And the vesting of the project under this approval was under the pre-2009 zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, when zoning and subdivision were separate. And that was lost when a portion of the growth management allocation had expired. So fast forward to 2011, that's when the overall project was approved under the current number DP 0901, under the current development bylaws. And that 2011 site plan scaled back that 2005 amphitheater to a green, but still retained a central common and a secondary green. 2017 was the last time that Finney Crossing went through growth management review. This was to adjust the allocation schedule for the fiscal years that the units were allocated in. At that time, it scored 67 points, including full points for the neighborhood space criterion. Later on in 2017, November 2017, there was a discretionary permit approved for the hotel and reconfiguring the street layout. At this time, the urban park was reduced from 1.5 acres to 1/3 of an acre, and other park spaces were eliminated or modified. The pre-application review for Building H and the urban park took place in July of 2021. Advisory boards and interdepartmental review. The Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee reviewed this application. Their conditions are included. Public Works and Fire also reviewed the application, and their memos are included as well. One comment letter was received at the time of mailout from Brian Forrest. What follows is a summation of the DRB's pre-application recommendations and how the applicant responded. Primarily, some statements about the urban park via the HAC recommendations, some standards about how the restaurant will operate in terms of air quality, hours of operation, noise and screening, maintenance. There was a HAC recommendation about the screening of mechanical equipment on the roof, that it be screened with the parapet. The original renderings provided with the application showed a fence around the mechanical equipment that would be visible from the road. This was modified by lowering the roof deck, which lowers the interior ceiling height, shifting the mechanical equipment, and confirming the design specs of the mechanical to ensure that it would be screened by the parapet. The HAC had some very specific pre-app recommendations that the DRB approved about the design of the urban park, and these have been addressed and will be discussed later on, primarily about the type of seating, the type of space for people to gather. There was also a parking study, a shared parking study submitted, as well as a comparison of the vehicle trips to Zephyr Road submitted. This property is located in the Taft Corners zoning district, where a restaurant and drinking place is an allowed use. The project complies with the dimensional standards in terms of the building being pulled to the street. There's no minimum lot size here, and the building is below the 36-foot height limit. Outdoor sales and storage. There's not outdoor sales or storage proposed, nor is it allowed here. They are proposing a lean-to-like addition on the west side of the building. It will be screened for mechanical delivery area storage for the restaurant use. This zoning district does have specific development standards for the building. It's brought up to the street, and the building massing and materials generally comply with those standards. Taft Corners also has the 5 of 9 design elements, where new development must meet 5 of the elements cumulatively across the development proposal. This includes multiple uses, lodging including residential, multiple stories, wide sidewalks, and an urban park. For multiple stories, we did ask the applicant to provide an analysis for all buildings within Finney Crossing. They are well above the 60% minimum at 92% and are anticipated to be at 98% if that future senior living building is constructed. The DRB should discuss the urban park and the quality and quantity of park space within Finney Crossing. The 5 of 9 criteria primarily focuses on that the urban park be visible and accessible to the public so that it complements other proposed uses. For example, a picnic table for employee lunch breaks is not an urban park. Growth management. The DRB must decide if the urban park upholds the growth management score of 67 points and full points for neighborhood space. The DRB should also review all neighborhood space in Finney Crossing for compliance. If the parks do not uphold the score, then the DRB and applicant should discuss remedies such as enhanced programming of existing park space with the residential and commercial areas of Finney Crossing. Growth management scores rarely come up in the review of commercial site development. However, in this case, the urban park is an element of Finney Crossing's overall neighborhood space. Staff has analyzed the permitting history and the evolution of neighborhood space as each phase builds out. A detailed analysis with site plans is attached. In summary, the number of parks and greens was reduced and the overall land area reduced and the programming simplified or not fulfilled. For example, the central green was going to be about 1.5 acres and include crisscrossing sidewalks. Now it's proposed to be the urban park today, 1/3 of an acre. There was in March 2017, the last time I was at growth management, another green shown where the healthy living building is currently today, and that stormwater basin. I think that was going to be about 1.4 acres. There was also another green that was formerly the amphitheater. And within the residential component of the building, things like the community buildings and pools and tennis court built out, but there are 2 playgrounds that have not been constructed to date. And there were some additional walking paths proposed near one of the pools and tennis courts that have also not been constructed. Overall, Finney Crossing is a 105-acre development with 587 dwelling units, approximately 225,000 square feet of commercial space, including the anticipated senior living facility, and 46.2 acres of open spaces, which includes everything from the Allenbrook Conservation Area and buffer north of the residential development to the commercial building stormwater ponds. It was awarded full points for neighborhood space with the expectation that the residential parks would be completed with play areas and walking paths, and the commercial area would be built out with 3 park spaces totaling approximately 2.5 to 3.5 acres. Since then, the park has been reduced to 1 acre. The 1/3 of an acre publicly accessible urban park next to Building H, and a 2/3 acre park is anticipated with the senior living facility. So the DRB should consider, does the proposed park uphold the DRB's expectation for full points in neighborhood space? If not, what programming elements can be added to this park or throughout Finney Crossing to uphold the score? And if the growth management score is upheld, if those 2 play areas and sidewalks through the neighborhood green are not constructed. What follows is some photos showing visuals of how the park space has evolved from growth management in 2017 to today, and excerpts from growth management criteria for neighborhood space. Full points. The developed neighborhood space is easily accessible and useful to its inhabitants. 1 to 10 points depending on the size, diversity of functions, and other characteristics of the space provided. In terms of access, connectivity, and traffic studies, complies as proposed. It has curb cuts onto Curtis Lane and Holland Lane, and the pedestrian and cyclist access is provided by sidewalks and the Curtis Lane multi-use path. Infrastructure, a standard decision is proposed. There's properties served by municipal water and sewer. Utility connections are underground. And there is some statement in the bylaw about how the required improvements will be guaranteed and maintained. Off-street parking and loading, we are proposing a specific condition. The vehicular parking complies as proposed. There is a shared parking analysis. There is surface parking available as well as on-street parking. And the adjacent apartment building, building A2, does have underground parking. The parking study analyzed the various hours of peak demand and determined that the maximum number of spaces needed is 241 around 6 p.m. And overall, this complies as proposed with our vehicular parking standards. Both ADA parking and bicycle parking in the table below are based on a quality restaurant as if it had its own standalone parking lot. A restaurant alone would require 86 vehicular parking spaces. They're proposing 4 ADA spaces adjacent to Building H's entrance. The bicycle parking can comply with conditions. There are 6 bicycle racks equivalent to 12 spaces provided in the northeast corner of the urban park, where the racks would be visible and accessible to both the park and the restaurant. The DRB should discuss if the number and location of the racks are sufficient, and if not, condition number 11 must be modified. Final plans must also include 2 long-term spaces and demonstrate that Building H employees will have access to the shared end-of-trip facilities in Building E. End-of-trip facilities being a shower and a locker room. Maintenance, we're recommending a specific decision, and the DRB may choose to add a new condition. Their litter management by providing trash cans on the sidewalks complies as proposed. Their snow storage and removal plan also complies. In terms of solid waste, the DRB must decide if the enclosure location and screening complies as proposed. They are proposing it in the parking lot as opposed to combined within the building. And it's designed to line up with the parking drive aisle for vehicular access for the dumpster, or for the dump truck. The DRB should decide if that location is acceptable or if it should be shifted closer towards the building. Compatibility, potential hazards, and nuisances. So the DRB here may also choose to add a new condition and decide if it complies. The DRB has the authority to review smoke and odor air quality standards, hours of operation, and screening, especially the screening of mechanical equipment. The other standards of this chapter are not applicable because this is a light commercial use as a restaurant, whereas some of those standards are geared towards heavy industrial uses. Air quality complies as proposed. The vents will be through the roof so that odors will be away from the paved path in the park. The DRB could limit hours of operation with a new condition. The applicant does state that the restaurant will not open till 11:30 a.m., allowing for morning deliveries, and deliveries will be prior to opening using the parking area and service area. Trash pickup also in the morning hours. For screening, this complies as proposed because the applicant revised the roof-mounted mechanical screening plan. And they do have the backyard area, that enclosed lean-to for utility meters, mechanical equipment, and restaurant supplies. Design review, there is a specific condition, including the HAC recommendations from their review on November 2nd. The HAC found that the building architectural design and materials comply as proposed, and they primarily focused on the landscaping and programming of the urban park under the requirements of Chapter 22 and 41. The applicant's original submission did not respond to the pre-app recommendations particularly, quote, comfortable places to sit, benches with backs, tables, dry lawns, areas for children to play, etc. The applicant submitted revised landscape plans, elevations, and a narrative. Primarily, granite seating blocks were replaced with more benches and picnic tables, and they added some concrete spheres as an artistic play element, as well as a sloped stone feature where people can, informally sit or gather if they're meeting up with a friend, that kind of thing. The HAC did, at their review, request additional benches and another picnic table. So this area on the northeast corner of the park, moving some of those concrete play spheres into the lawn area, providing another picnic table, and providing additional benches along the walkway for seating. Landscaping and street trees, this complies as proposed with a condition. They are providing street trees in compliance with the type 3 or 4 buffer. And there are existing street trees and new ones are being proposed. And there's additional screening between the pedestrian path and the building as well, along the hotel side of the building. Signs and public art, no master sign plan is required and no public art is proposed. And in terms of impact fees, they're normally assessed when an administrative permit is filed. The applicant did provide an analysis of their transportation impact fees, where the cost of constructing Zephyr Road, I believe, is $1 million more than what they would have had to pay for impact fees. So adding more vehicle trips with the restaurant, they are still well below their cost of constructing Zephyr Road and will not be liable for transportation impact fees. Outdoor lighting, this also complies with conditions. Overall, the lighting plan complies. The final plan should include some notes about light timing. An urban park is considered publicly accessible and open 24/7 and should have some level of illumination throughout the night, but not full illumination, whereas the restaurant lighting should be dimmed after close of business. And these lighting standards can be addressed at final plans. What follows are some specific findings of fact and conclusions of law with some decisions for the DRB around the urban park, as well as the list of conditions of approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. I failed to ask who was representing the applicant before Emily read her staff notes. Who is here? Chris Snyder, are you present?
Yes.
Good evening, Chris. Who else is with you?
Andy Rubber.
Hi, Andy. Chris, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Yep. Chris Snyder with Snyder Homes and Snyder FC Commercial Properties, and our address is 4076 Sheldon Road, Suite 6, Sheldon.
Thank you. Andy?
Andy Rowe, Limerick Dickinson, 14 Morris Drive, Essex.
Okay. Chris and Andy, you're up next. I'd like to hear your detailed thoughts on the points raised by Emily and staff, please.
Absolutely. First off, thank you again for taking the time to review our proposal for building needs in the urban park. This is another important component of the overall development of Finney Crossing. And the reality is this portion was approved in the park area was approved basically when the hotel was being permitted back in 2017. So a lot of the changes from that Emily noted were reviewed extensively at that time and addressed, we think, satisfactorily during that time. But certainly can speak to some of those things a little bit further. As Emily noted, since our pre-application on this property, in this specific building and the park, we've been working on a design team, develop updated plans that reflect the comments and concerns brought up both by the DRB and the HAC and staff. We feel that we have improved the overall layout of the park and made it more attractive and an enticing location and a usable park space than what was previously designed. And building H is focused and views out onto the park area. And again, it's another important backstop and viewpoint from when we enter into Finney Crossing on Holland Lane. So, in terms of park space, I would say that this park has become a gathering spot, and it is smaller than designed in 2011, but what we have found since 2011 and over the last 10 years is that smaller park areas actually work better. In that they're actually more usable, friendlier, and enticing to go to. And so what we have done with the help of our landscape architect is really augment the usability of this park and the excitement of it. And if you think about where it's located, it's directly adjacent to a hotel lobby. It will be just out of the restaurant, the patio of the restaurant, and then we also have a commercial building with Healthy Living in it, and also with LLE kitty corner across from it. So this park will get used, and it will be used by a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and we're excited to see that it be used in that fashion. It will be a private park. It's not a public park, but it is private, and we are planning to have it, maintained and cared for the way that we have cared for the other property within Finney Crossing. Let's see, what else about that? I think that's kind of the focus has really been on park improvements over the last couple of months, and feel that we're having done a lot of the things that everybody has brought up to about usability and creating the space where people will go to. There are other items that we noted with regards to building H, and we did address the mechanical concerns and questions about that. We did make some modifications, as Emily noted, about the shielding of the mechanical on the roof will not be visible from the streets. Even without a parapet specifically surrounding the equipment, it'll just be a parapet on the building edge. There are a couple of other questions and concerns that were brought up regarding the track building. It should be noted that typically the fire department and Vermont Department of Public Safety wants to see track buildings or closures 30 feet from the building, and that we have located it actually in an area that's accessible for restaurants to actually get to, and if we had located it closer to the building, it would be extremely difficult for it to be picked up. The other concern about the trash building being closer to the building H is that it potentially would create an alley field between the access points and the delivery area But those are, our sort of big items, and there are some little details that we certainly can walk through the staff notes. And certainly, Andy, is there anything else that you can add to about any of the other staff comments?
Just a couple of minor items that staff had raised. Long-term bike spaces can be accommodated in the backyard area, the enclosure on the west end of the building. End-to-trip facilities will be shared in Bldg with the railroad and Maine restaurant employees. And certainly we can include notes on the lighting plan regarding dimming of lights. The lights on the building would be subject to dimming. Yes, we look for a little bit of input from the DRB. There's 3 lights through the park area. Should those all be dimmed 50%, leave 1 on, shut 2 off, leave 2 on, shut 1 off. I guess whatever the DRB's preference is there, we'd be happy to accommodate, but we'd like some guidance there as opposed to just dimming them all 75%. But other than that, I think Chris covered the details related to Building H.
And one thing I'd like to also further add is, one of the things that during the revisions that have happened at Finney Crossing, there have been other spaces that have been added, other park areas that aren't necessarily defined as park areas. There's a large gardening area behind apartment building number 4. There are smaller spaces along Holland Lane, where there's parking in seconds, that's all sort of set up and organized. There are also, there's a large open space with pool and tennis courts and gardening areas at the that the homeowners get to use. And then there's a large pool and open space area for the apartment building tenants. And so I think, over time, it may seem like certain parts or pieces have been modified or reduced, but the reality is you probably also added places in other areas. It just is done differently, and maybe not defined as a park. Maybe we should have done that a little bit differently in terms of presentation. But I think if you look at the overall property, you would find that if you walk the overall property, you would find that there are spaces for residents throughout the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yes.
DRB members, questions?
I just have one question, probably more for staff, around the definition of the neighborhood park. Because one thing that kind of bothers me is the stormwater pond being classified as a neighborhood park from C, but I don't know exact definition that they're using for that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. So in the applicant's set of materials, they did provide a list of an analysis of open space comparison, and they did quantify stormwater ponds as neighborhood parks. I probably wouldn't count that as an urban park either. Unlike the ag-rural part of town, there isn't a quantitative open space requirement in the growth center. But I did note that in the analysis provided as well.
Okay, thank you.
Paul Christensen, questions?
No, I'm looking at changes.
John Hemmelgarn.
This is a good one. Let me start with the dumpster enclosure. I think I think it's a perfectly good spot to put that. I mean, I think further away from the building is, you know, it provides nicer places to park closer to the building, for one thing. The concern I would have is, it looks like the back of that enclosure, though, is right up against the, kind of the walkway there that we've tried to develop, at the hotel. And I'm just wondering what kind of screening is involved there so that someone who is walking through the neighborhood and down that pedestrian path at the hotel is not kind of having a negative impact of a dumpster building right there.
I would say that, you know, one thing, John, and I appreciate that comment, is if you look at the proposed design of the enclosure, you know, it's flat, you know, fenced, but it's not like a barricade. I mean, and then we certainly can add some landscaping to the west of it along the Curtis Lane bike path.
I mean, as you know, I'm frequently concerned with pedestrian experience here through the neighborhoods, and I think that needs a little bit of attention there. I mean, I know there's a landscaping plan here. I can see the trees and the planting I need. So this, and then as you move to the other end of this walkway, it's interesting. What I don't see here is a great connection between kind of the outdoor spaces there at the side of the hotel. I think there's a little fire pit there and whatnot, which I understand are probably for the use of the hotel folks, but it certainly is something that is one outdoor space wanting to blend into and be connected to the others. I'm not perfectly clear on how those are connected here. You've also got then, I see the outdoor terrace area of the restaurant. And again, I apologize, but I'm not getting a good picture of what that looks like right there. So you've got a sidewalk and then a planted bed of, and I'm not clear on what the elevation of that seating area is in relation to the sidewalk.
So they'll basically be at the same elevation, the sidewalk and the patio area. What there would be is a planting bed and also a fence. Will be required because there will be alcohol served in that location. So it'll only be I think it needs to be 42-inch tall fence. So it's not, and it's not solid. It'll be an open, black and blue fence is what we've been using in these types of areas. And there is a connection over to the hotel where you see that 22 HP that was just on the screen there a second ago. You know, it will connect over to the bike path, which then is basically adjacent to and connected to the hotel lobby area. They may have a couple of stepping stones. Or patio stones that go out to the bike path. I can't remember exactly how they connected, but it is connected in some way. Andy, maybe you remember better.
Yeah, so the east-west, there's a little spur segment of sidewalk that heads east-west. That aligns with the canopy, you know, from a secondary entrance from the hotel with their outdoor fire pit to the south. And then they have, there's a small landscape area between the building and the path. And then the hotel actually has an outdoor seating area that I believe is associated with their breakfast area to the north of that. So, you know, that's sort of private. The outdoor fireplace to the south kind of blends much more with the path, but that east-west sidewalk segment aligns with their canopy and leads right into the building.
And what is in that little triangular space between the curved sidewalk and pedestrian path or the bike path.
That's landscaped with a slight mound, the grade comes up a couple of feet there. With the landscaping.
So is the intent to try to separate the outdoor area of the hotel from this park so that they're totally separate entities, or are you trying to meld them and make them kind of part of a single experience?
Well, that's a good question. You know, the hotel area is really meant for the people in the hotel, not for the general public to go to, where our park is open to the general public. And so what we have said is, hey, what we want to do is encourage people from the hotel to utilize this space as well and becoming part of the general public. So I think the idea is, yeah, we're sort of separating it to a certain extent, the park from the hotel private spaces, but yet we're encouraging the hotel space to come into the public areas.
Yeah.
It's a hard transition, you know.
It's a difficult one. I'm not sure you quite got it yet. But, I mean, on the other hand, the deck for the restaurant is absolutely you're encouraging people, the people using the restaurant, though, to be an active participant in the park.
Yes.
As opposed to the hotel. So you're kind of asking two different things there, in very close proximity to one another. But this all really gets down to the real gist of the questions that we have going here, which is, who's using this park? Why are they there? And what are they going to do once they get there? And is there enough space for them to do that? And I have to say, if you want to remember back to when Holland Lane was relocated, I was not the happiest DRB member about that change. This is a small park, and I appreciate what you were saying about that sometimes the parks can be too big and maybe have a more dynamic space with a smaller one. That's perfectly true. But I walked through there this afternoon, and it doesn't look very big before you put the restaurant in there. And that restaurant's going to take up half of this site. And there's roads right there, and I understand the berms are intended to try to separate that a little bit, and that'll be good because it's extremely flat right now, except for the area that's kind of wet because it's down lower than the sidewalks. It's really hard for me to think that this is an equivalent park to what that very large park that spanned both sides. I mean, it extended into where the retirement home is going to be in the original drawings. And it certainly would have allowed you to do 2 or 3 of the parks like you have here, that you could have separated into separate areas, that one focused towards dog walkers and dog exercisers, and the other one for small kids, or other ones for older people. I don't know. It really gets down to who's using this park. And what I don't want to do is end up with that open space in the middle that nobody uses. And it's just used to be able to kind of, I don't know. It's open space that nobody wants to go on because there's no real purpose to it. And so I guess that's my question. Who's going to be using this park? How are they going to get there? And what are they going to do there?
So who's going to use this park? People who come to any of the commercial establishments that are located on the property. That's one group. Another group is going to be hotel guests. Other groups will be other people that will use it are the ones who are currently residing of the 587 residences that are part of Finney Crossing. They're already walking by here there already, you can see some of the bike paths and the walkways, and accepting, all the commercial areas, and so I think who's gonna be using it is the people who live in the neighborhood. I think the people who come into the neighborhood, to go to healthy living, will go and have, go and play on the boulders or the little climbing feature, or look at, sit out on the grass on a nice day. And so I think you'll find, what we tried to do was create seating areas, have benches, have some tables, have some open space, and also creating some areas within that are going to be utilized by whoever is coming to the property, but also by a lot of people who already live there.
John, any questions?
I'm just thinking about other urban parks that are successful, and frequently they don't have a big open space in the middle. Usually there's some focal point somewhere that's people say, let's go down to the fountain, or, the memorial, or whatever, and then there's places for lots of people to sit, and you've got your bench, and you're right next to another bench with some other group of people who are sitting there, and you don't mind being that close, and nobody's listening to each other's conversations, but you're not usually all kind of sitting around with a big open space in the middle, and it's very odd when we're talking about a big open space in the middle, but we're also complaining potentially about how small the space is altogether. And I'm just not sure this is doing enough for me to want to approve it as it is. I think that given the fact that we've distilled a very large area into a small one, that I think we need to have a more concentrated set of activities that are being promoted here, rather than just a big open space that people can kind of sit around on the edges of. That's my concern here. It's a very small space, and for it to have been advertised at the beginning as this very grand space with a central element and paths coming at it from multiple directions to that central space, that they probably had 3 or 4 areas the size of this open space as subsets of it. I need to be convinced that this is actually a really dynamic, cool place that's going to do everything that the other one was going to do that this project is sold on.
Well, let me go back to one thing that, I have to bring up, and I don't like to be negative. That's not in my standard plan here, but I can tell you the primary reason why these changes have been made have been to not recreate something that was created in the town, and at the time in 2011 was thought to be the approach that was appropriate, and that's the open space at Maple Tree Park, or Maple Tree across the street, and that square box in the center has not provided the usability because of the way that the traffic flows around it. We've heard lots of comments about that back a number of years ago when we were revising this. And so I guess what I would say is, from our perspective, 5 years ago, we started re-looking at how the overall property would be used, one of the challenges was the park. And so what we did is not only are we setting aside this much better park. This is an expensive park, John. This is not the least expensive. It's not just a wide open space with a piece, some grass down there. You know, this is built up and designed and created with what I would say are pieces that people will utilize and think are cool and interesting. But not only do we have this, but we have other spaces along Palm Lane. If you go to, you know, the north, there's corner pockets, there's, you know, one of the things we changed, we eliminated Curtis Road. There was a road where the bike path is. That was a road. And we eliminated an essential road, you know, Curtis Lane, and we basically made it a bike path so that it was more pedestrian oriented to get people who live in the neighborhood and who are going to be in the commercial area to move through there in a pedestrian fashion. So I think, you know, those are some of the big substantial changes that were made. And this is modification that Emily's showing right now. I mean, this area, that plan was approved. What year was that approved, Emily? Do you know?
2017, November 2017.
So what we said is, hey, we get it. In 2017, so 5 years ago, we were, you know, got approval to go in this direction. And what we've done here is we've augmented what was shown as just basically a green open space to more of an activated space to the current plan, which has, you know, arcs and walkways and other structures and seating areas. And so I do feel like we've actually gotten a lot better than what was originally approved in 2017. So I think you should be looking at it and saying, hey, where did we start out in 2017? Not where we started out in 2011. You know, that's 10 plus years ago. And that in 2017, we all agreed, and the DRB did too, that where we were headed was the right direction. What we've done since then is even improve it even more. And so I think that's where, you know, I take comments from both the DRB and the HAC and community members and staff and say, hey, you know what? This part is better than what we were proposing and got approved in 2017.
No, not to me it's not, but I mean, if you take that plan and what you just had up there a minute ago, and one of the positive things I thought about it was that it had, while the overall park area had gotten smaller because of the relocation of Holland Lane, there was, the one before this, this one, there was another little park down there in the lower right, which kind of allowed the pedestrian experience here to kind of wander from one, and there's a spot here, oh, what's over there, and you kind of wander through the space, and you go from one of these little green spaces to another that's been developed and is there intentionally, and that one has disappeared as far as I can tell.
No, it's currently there in place now.
It's just exactly like you've shown it.
Yeah.
It's not noteworthy as you walk through there. So, you know,
I can tell you we spent the money on it.
Are there benches there and trees and pavement markings?
It's all there.
I mean, I know the little sidewalk at the corner is there, but
it's there.
Right, it's right adjacent to the driveway going into apartment building A3. And it is framed on the west side by a few, I think there's 3 or 4 birch trees there, and
Right.
there's a round seating wall.
There's a little curved path right there where the cursor is. I
But
would
there's
agree with
also
that.
there's also another seating area to the there's another one now on this hotel where building F is shown. It doesn't show up because of the access road. But there's going to be parts and pieces of it that are retained. There is just to the left, Emily. Yeah, there's that park area is currently constructed.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I walked through there and it doesn't feel like a little enclosed spot that you want to stop and kind of sit and relax out of the hustle and the bustle of the traffic that's going through there and whatnot. So, which is what I think that the park that you're showing now is intended to be.
The new park is as designed in front of, this open space park is much larger than that and much more, I would say, intriguing and interesting for people to want to go there.
I would agree, and I think that it would be even more intriguing and interesting if there were more features to it, and that it was a place where you could go with your kids who were just excited because, oh, they finished looking at this, and then they go on and they look a little further and there's something else that's interesting, like the little boulder walls or the little round.
I mean, the spheres and the boulder walls and the seating areas and the benches.
But they're all around the edge. And eventually,
I wouldn't say they're on the but they are on the edge because we also want to provide some open space so that somebody can throw a frisbee in there too.
And are people really going to throw frisbees here when you're that close to the street? See, I think it's too small to throw frisbees in. I think it's too small to throw balls for your dog to go fetch. I think it's too small for that. That's my fear here. I'm just not convinced, Chris, that you've provided something that's equivalent to what you got points for at the beginning. And I don't see how this has been made that much better to make up for that. Because, I mean, in reality, we wanted this, but we wanted more of it. And we were promised more of it.
We have more, John, though.
We don't have more, Chris. We don't have more.
Okay,
this is a very small spot. And initially, this park was right at the end of that entrance drive. It was a focal spot. It was a place that you could see from Route 2. It was a place that was going to try to draw people into this development. And now it's on the side. It's nothing that people know about unless they come here. It's nothing that's going to say, oh, we're going to go to this place because it's a really cool. I mean, if there was a fountain or a water park or a little water splash zone there, you'd have people going there all the time. But instead, once they've been on the boulder walls for a couple times, it'll be fun to take your 5-year-old or your 3-year-old down there and let them climb around. But this is not the focal point that was I feel was promised here to begin with.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that we haven't met your promises, but I think since 2017, we've been following through on what we've committed. And what I would tell you is that we've worked very hard on adding the features and parts and pieces and working with people who design these parks in these spaces to ensure that we are following through on our promises, because that's one of the things, John, if somebody questions me about that I do stand tall on is, if you ask me to perform and complete something and I agree to it, I follow through on it. And what I'm saying is, hey, we in 2017 had lots of discussion about Holland Lane and the access and roads, and I understand your perspective was not loving this plan, but I would tell you it did get approved. And so here we are today, 5 years later, and we are sticking to our guns in providing what we promised, and accentuated it more. And I don't think we're getting credit in what I was talking about earlier I don't think we're getting credit for all the other open spaces that are around the overall neighborhood that aren't defined as parks, that people are using them as parks. People are using them as seating areas. You know, that is one of the things that we probably, as I noted before, aren't getting credit for either. So I think, you know, if we went back and re-looked at things, you know, we have a lot of open space on this overall property, more than what we originally, maybe not more, but we have really good defined spaces for people to use. And, you know, I do think that we, I will stand my ground on, hey, I feel like we're, you know, providing what we promised. You and I may have a different opinion on what that promise was, but I feel like since 2017, we've improved this area, we've made it better, and I feel like we've done a better job of designing and planning for this park.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your perspective. I'm just not sold on it. I don't understand who's using this open space in the middle, and that it's kind of it's neither, you know, it's not this or that. It's kind of nothing. You know, this wants to be either a densely developed activity space, or it wants to be a kind of a grand open area that's, you know, but I fear that you've just taken a bunch of this space on this park and made it into something that nobody's going to be using. It's the space in the middle that has no purpose. And it could be other things. Why not contour that land more? Why not make it into more of a play area? Again, that's why I asked to begin with, who's using this? I don't think it's, I think it's nice to have some things around the edges to kind of watch what's happening in there. But there's nothing happening in the middle. There's nothing happening as a focus. And you know, if you told me this was a sloped lawn and there's a stage area there and there's going to be, you know, shows and whatnot, maybe I could see that. You know, that actually then starts to explain the curved walk at the back. But I haven't heard that, and frankly, it seems a little close to the road, to busy streets, to be doing that. So I'm just disappointed that there's not more to this than there is. This seems like the big part kind of just shrunk and not done differently because it's a different size, it's a different location, it's a different relationship to the street, and whatnot. So I'm gonna stop right there, I guess. My opinion is different than yours.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Dave Turner.
I somewhat agree with John. I don't feel it's going to be the destination park now. I mean, it does have an open space, so, but I don't think the utilization is going to be what we were thinking it was going to be. I feel that it may draw some people from the restaurant to go in there and seat and stuff like that. So it will get used, but it's not as appealing as it was before when it was a little bigger with other amenities. But I think it will serve as a park, yes, the way it is.
Paul, do you have anything to add?
Well, I vaguely remember, I thought that we had this big discussion about potentially having to fence this part of the park off because the original plan was the restaurant was going to have outdoor activity in that park. Am I mistaken? Chris?
There was the previous proposal was for a Fiddlehead Brewery, and they were potentially going to use it for some outdoor events.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember.
because of that, they were going to require fencing around the space. And because the restaurant is going to be fenced along the seating area, that's not required in this scenario.
Oh, so they're not going to emphasize any brewery in this restaurant now?
No, this is a restaurant with a bar or seating area.
Okay, just want to make sure. So in other words, that original plan is now gone. The outdoor activity.
It was the brewery who was going
Yeah.
to be providing those events. Yes.
Okay. Then I'm pretty much kind of just assuming it's going to be a piece of land that people may or may not use. But that's I can't predict what people are going to use, and nobody really can. This may suddenly be the most popular place in the world for people to suddenly be sitting there after they're eating. I don't know. We'll see in the future, I guess.
Okay, members of the audience, is there anyone who would like to make comments?
If you're here from the public, you can comment in the chat if you'd like to speak, or press the raise hand button on the toolbar. The only thing I have is Ian Campbell sent me a lengthy direct message. He said he didn't have questions about the Finney crossing agenda, but sent some comments about the traffic on Zephyr Road, Stillwater Lane, Day Lane area. But he's no longer in the meeting tonight. He left.
Okay, so no other public waiting to comment.
Yeah, no public comment. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Matthew Spitznagel said, I agree with John. A park with a purpose is more important to me. Matthew, if you'd like to speak, you're welcome to unmute and state your name and address for the record. I think Matthew just commented in the chat.
Okay, last call for public comments. Okay, DRB members. We have an option to close and deliberate, or we could continue. I'm of the opinion that we should close and deliberate because we have the option to insert conditions in our deliberations and our findings.
Agreed.
Is there anyone that has concern or objection to closing this?
Pete, my only concern would be is I didn't get a real good chance to walk the rest of the park to look at it, and I was wondering as a DRB group if we didn't want to consider doing that to get an overall sense of the actual stuff there. I did go to the open spaces and I did go to the stormwater areas and stuff, but in general, I don't know. It's just me. Myself, I might do a complete thorough walk through the area and see the other areas.
Other DRB members, thoughts on Dave Turner's comment?
So Dave, you're suggesting that we take a site visit?
Yes, that's what I'm, just so we can, like I said, I walked a little bit of it, but I would like to see a little bit more of the Finney crossing areas, open areas, so we can get a better feel for it. It's not written in stone, it's just something a suggestion.
Emily,
Mm-hmm.
refresh my memory on the length of time that we have, if we close, we have 45 days before.
Yes, when you close a hearing, you have 45 days to issue a decision. If you would like to continue the hearing for a site visit, we would have to warn the site visit as a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
And Pete, you were asking whether we should close this hearing or continue it with the option, I think, that's been put out there. If we continue it, it would be to get additional, we would ask for additional design of the park? Or is it just something that we're going to discuss as condition and vote on up or down tonight?
Well, if we continue it, we're not gonna vote on it.
Understood.
And
But I'm not sure what continuing it would accomplish.
Yeah. I'm actually fine with closing it. I think they can get enough information from stuff, so I don't want to both processes because my lack of actually getting there and looking at the property before doing it. So.
Okay, thank you, John. Dave. So, John, I'm just providing, I'm very much inclusive here. I want everybody to have an opportunity to provide feedback. I was providing a continuance as an option. I was not necessarily recommending.
I understand. What I'm trying to do, so I'm trying to imagine a path through where the continuance actually leads us all to a place where we can all be happy with the outcome. And again, I don't really understand yet if we continue it, what would we get? We would be asking for a revised plan as part of the continuance.
That would be an option.
Yes, it would be an option.
Can I ask the board, so we spent a lot of time on this plan, for the park. We had that acting do it, twice. We made additional modifications to it to include their comments. We had presented this plan to this board, which it looks different, but not just as different. But what is it that you think is going to make it drastic, plan-wise, drastically different than what you've got here?
Chris, that's what I'm wrestling with. And again, I don't like designing anything from the DRB. So I don't know the answer to that question. All I know is that, at some point we're going to have to just deliberate amongst ourselves and decide the questions that the staff has raised in front of us, which is whether this meets the criteria of the 509, whether it, satisfies what's been applied for and approved in the past. So I guess we should just close this hearing and we'll have that debate amongst ourselves.
Can you, I have to ask this question because I think it's coming, I have to say, when I read the staff report, I've been a bit surprised by the approach of, hey, we're going to go back and look at the approval from 2017. So why wouldn't we be held to the quote-unquote promises made in these previous applications? I'm not saying that I'm not following through on those promises. What I'm saying is, I guess I would have thought that those discussions would have happened in 2017 when the revision was made.
Well, we didn't have a specific part in front of us to review, and we've been told repeatedly those things will be coming, and you'll have a chance for discretionary permit to review those, and that's what we're doing.
But you did have the specific area was shown.
Right, but again, and I think you would agree right now that if this were a flat lawn, and you said that's what it's going to be, we'd say, no, that's not enough, and you would agree with us. Right, if it was just the lawn that's out there right now, and we were going to plant one tree in the middle and call it the millennial oak or something, you know, it'll be a millennial oak in 100 years. But, so we know that that's not enough. But when you cross the threshold of having developed this sufficiently to kind of meet the goals that everyone either imagined or thought were promised or were promising at the time. And I don't know the answers to those questions, and that's kind of where we're landing right now.
Yes, I think you summarized it well. I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes ago, John, where you said, I think we're at the point where we need to close the hearing and deliberate. And Chris Snyder, you've had, there's clarity in the message. It's been heard. John, your concerns have been heard. I think we all kind of understand your different perspectives and positions. Last chance from DRB members, but I'm going to ask for last comments and close unless somebody strongly opposes that path. Okay, any final comments, Chris and Randy?
No, I've commented enough tonight. Andy, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, and not to take the chair's position here, but it seems like John, there's a disagreement on the approach to the park, a large open space in the middle versus something that's fully activated, potentially with a focal point. And I guess that's what it comes down to, whether that's a necessary element to meet the 5 and 9 criteria, or whether it's simply a differing point of view on park design.
That's really what it is. It's either A or B. DRB members, any final questions?
I'm good.
Good. General public, any last questions? Okay, it's 8:59, I'm going to close DP 09-01.23. Thank you, Chris and Andy, for coming. The DRB is now going to go into deliberative session. So if Emily, you put those appropriate people into the waiting room, that would be appreciated.
Scott, I think you're muted.
Either way, you're up. Wait, Pete, you're up. Go. Somebody show up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So hang on, it's done now.
Boom.
Yeah, it's showing NDI on the screen for the video feed.
Yeah, and yeah, it should be.
All right, so
Yeah.
are we live?
Yeah, the camera's not, it's stopped feeding it.
Yeah, we can start going. You just won't see us for a moment,
Yeah.
but we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, welcome all. Williston DRB is out of deliberative session. It's November 9th, 2021. The time is 10:16. Is there a motion for DB 20-18?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 11.4.1, I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all the accompanying materials included in the recommendations of the town staff, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 9th, 2021, authorize DB 20-18 to participate in growth management in March of 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Paul seconds it. Any further discussion? I will read your name. Please indicate yay or nay, please. Paul Christensen.
Yay.
John Hammerberg recuses himself. Scott Riley.
Yay.
Dave Turner.
Yay.
And Pete Kelly, chair, is a yay. 4 in favor, none opposed, 1 recusal. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DB 09-01-23?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, John Hemmelgarn, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory board required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 9th, 2021, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 09-01.23 and approve the discretionary permits subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. We are going to need staff here in a moment. We are going to clarify a couple points under the conclusions of law. Number 3, it will read the urban park adjacent to the building building H does not uphold the growth management score of 67 points. Number 4 will be that the neighborhood park areas without 2 play areas and walking path does uphold the growth management score. And number 5, the urban park adjacent to building H does fulfill of the TCZD 5 of 9 criteria for urban parks. We are going to add, all right, well, let's just go right through this. Number 9, we're going to strike the sub-statement A from that criteria or from that condition. Condition number 10, we'll add an A, which says final plans must include additional landscape screening between the dumpster enclosure and Curtis Lane bike path per WDB 18 and 23. Number 11, condition number 11, we will add a B on that, which says final plans must include a minimum of 6 additional short-term bicycle parking spaces near the southwestern corner of the park convenient to the bike path. And finally, we are going to add condition number 21, final plans shall include revisions to the park to add elements that activate the central area and provide a defining feature of Finney Crossing. And then the last modification is in the motion, which I read incorrectly. We are going to require that the final plans be approved by the DRB. So the final paragraph of the motion is actually going to read, this approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. A little bit of backtracking there, but I think it's clear.
Yep.
Should it say obtain approval of these plans from DRB? Just switch out staff to DRB.
I think that would make it more clear.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you want me to read that paragraph again in the motion?
Yes.
So the motion will read then at the end, this approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from the DRB, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Great. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, yea or nay? Paul Christensen.
Yay.
John Hamilton.
Yay.
Scott Riley accuses himself. Dave Turner.
Yay.
Pete Kelly, yay. 4 in favor, none opposed, 1 recused. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 26th?
Yes, so the minutes of October 26th constitute the DRB's written decision, including the conditions of the approval for DP 20-13. Approval of the minutes will make the decision official. Staff advises that DRB to amend the minutes by removing condition number 2A1 and number 21 for DP 2013 and approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, so there's an amendment for the minutes as written, as Dave just described. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Paul seconded. Any further discussion?
None here.
Indicate your approval, please. Paul Christensen.
Aye.
John Hamilton.
Aye.
Scott Riley.
Aye.
Dave Turner.
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain because I was not present. So there's 4 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Is there any other business to bring forward to the DRB at this time?
Could we get a head count for November 23rd? That's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
I will be missing.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
I'll be in Zoom.
Okay, I'm around.
Okay.
Are there any items on the agenda that will necessitate recusals?
There might be.
Me.
Yeah, what's on that agenda?
The two Trinity.
Senior housing now.
No, it's the Trinity Baptist Church.
Right, it's the 2 Trinities, and then there's an Old Stage Road appeal. And Taft Corners Associates is getting continued again, so just Trinity Baptist Church property.
So Scott,
Is it senior housing on there?
No, senior housing is going to be on December 14th.
Yep, my mistake, correct.
Wow, we're busy here all of a sudden.
Yeah, end of year.
We were missing meetings left and right over there in the summer, but.
Yeah, we're right.
The other item on
And
December
no complaint.
14th is also Riley Cohen Partnership LLC, 156 Avenue B.
Oh, there's another one I get to recuse myself on.
So we won't see you that night, will we?
Well, we probably will. Just as a spectator.
Well, okay, so the good news, I guess, in the short run is that in the next November meeting, we have at least 4 people that have indicated they can make it, so we'll have our quorum. When's the select board meeting, and when do we get a new member?
So far, there's one applicant. I think Eric's waiting to see if anybody else applies, and hopefully there'll be a hearing soon. If you guys know of anybody that you would think would be a good fit, you guys are welcome to reach out to people. We as staff can't do that.
The application date, by when?
I think it's still open until filled.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And when we were doing roll call for the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we don't know what Saladino's status is either.
No.
He might be around.
Matt, one question. This is the stuff that the church is doing. Is that gonna be taxable property now?
If it changes hands to a private entity, yes, it would be taxable property.
But what happens if the church decides to run it?
So if the church were to run it, you know, like, so in the case, I assume we're talking about Trinity Baptist, not SS Alliance.
Yeah.
You know, Trinity Baptist has some staff housing proposed, which I assume would stay in the ownership of the church, similar to the dormitories in the Theological Seminary down where Pine Ridge used to be.
Yeah.
So, I am not a total expert in when something crosses over the property tax threshold, but generally anything owned by a church is exempt.
Yeah.
But if you're a private citizen and you buy a house out of a Trinity Baptist subdivision, you're paying taxes on that.
Even, that is an interesting question, Paul. You know, can the church act as a developer and keep the profits, keep the money generated by
I have serious problems with that.
Well, I do too. I mean, that puts a church in competition with, developers who are paying taxes on their stuff.
Absolutely. When the Yankee Stadium used to be owned by the Knights of Columbus and was tax-free, it hurt the hell out of me. You know who owns it now, don't you? Or did for a while? Latter-day Saints bought it from the Knights of Columbus.
Well, it just goes to show you that you should root for the Red Sox, but anything else, anything else to bring forth on that?
I think we're at the fork that we need to take.
I think, Yogi said good night. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I adjourn, yeah, I make that motion. And our second date.